The cost of IT in business can be staggering. From hardware and software expenses to services like internet and phone, you don't need to spend a fortune on IT to succeed. If your organization spends more than $500 monthly on any service, or you're considering signing a long-term contract, IT Enabled can help you manage your technology and minimize your costs. Contact us today to schedule a free consultation. IT Enabled, we're here to help.
Kyle, we're excited to have you on the Connect podcast. Thanks for joining us today.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. So why don't you give us a little bit about your background, and then we'll talk about Reach Behavioral Therapy.
Okay. I've been practicing postgrad for a little over 16 years. I've worked for CPS. I've worked at 3 different state-supported living centers. I've done counseling out of a church.
Wow.
I worked for what I think they're still called MHMRs, but I did. The state gave me a designation as a DMR, which is a designated doctor of what they called back then mental retardation, which would be IDD now. But the state used to have such a shortage of psychologists that would work in that sector that they would give honorary titles to people that could come and do that. I've worked in a G5 maximum security prison, and then really started to fall in love with what I do now.
Yeah.
And that's working with children and adolescents, and sometimes even adults with autism.
Wow. Well, you could tell some stories.
I plan on one day writing a book.
I was going to say, you need to write a book about
there's things that you
all
hear and see
seen.
that, just the experience. I love passing that on to my interns,
Yeah.
the people that I supervise, but just some of the things that you hear and see that are so outside, the normal is pretty cool.
That's fantastic. And Reach Behavioral Therapy is actually a fairly new business in Lufkin. Is that, how long have y'all been here?
We opened up in 2017 on a small scale.
Okay.
And so I back then didn't have an office. And so we were really just doing state contracts. And so we were working with more at that point, adolescents and adults with any type of intellectual disability. So like Down syndrome, multiple different types of syndromes, autism, of course. And so that was something that I knew what I wanted to do, and my mission was to open something in Lufkin, but I needed the capital to do that. And so it was something I was really familiar with. It's something I had done for 6 or 7 years, and so it was pretty natural to jump into that. And we did that, and then we started looking for some office space in 2018, 2019, and Gabe, the owner of what used to be a medicine shop, which is now Lufkin Pharmacy, he had an annex building that they weren't using a whole lot of, and so he was really great and let us lease some of that space, very affordable, really got our foot in the door in Lufkin. And then we leased a place on the north side of the loop 2 weeks before the quarantines. And so we worked our way through that. And now we have the facility that we have on the south side of the loop.
That's great.
And we've been in that building for a little over a year now.
That's great. Well, we're so blessed to have you in our neck of the woods to be able to help people.
So for those who may not know, what is Reach Behavioral Therapy? What do you do? What do you specialize in?
Okay.
Kind of give us the overview of how that works.
Right. So we specialize in providing what's called applied behavior analysis to children and adolescents, and sometimes adults that have autism or Asperger's, which the new diagnostic book doesn't really separate the two a whole lot. But we will come in and we do pretty intensive testing at the very beginning during our evaluation, and we determine an individual's strengths, their deficits, and then we compare that to what the testing says is normal functioning. And our goal really is to get those deficits up to strengths, get those up to age appropriate. And if we have, the end all goal is for the person to receive enough therapy to where they can re-engage in whatever their age appropriate environment is. So if it's someone that's like 6 or 7, then age appropriate would be school. We're trying to get them school ready. If it's somebody who's 16, 17, we might be getting them ready to try to enter the workforce or possibly live as independently as possible, things like that.
That's awesome. So are you doing testing for these things? So if you have a child that you think may have autism, is that something where we would come to you for testing for that? Is that kind of how that works?
We definitely can, and I've done those assessments thousands of times. The caveat to that is if you're wanting to pursue the type of therapy that we have, insurance companies will only accept that from a licensed psychologist.
Gotcha.
And so we are trying to hire one inside, so that in-house, so that we could speed that process up. But otherwise, we refer to local practitioners.
Awesome.
So what sets you apart from other ABA providers?
Good question. I think that there's 2 really key things that would separate us. And the first is that I'm a licensed psychoanalyst. I'm a licensed counselor. You will not find very many counselors that are also behavioralists. The testing is so different, and the mentality and mindset is so different that years back they even made it to where if you had a master's in counseling, you couldn't even sit for the ABA exam anymore. Okay. And so very different ways of thinking. And so I think that's one of the main things that sets us apart is I'm not looking for perfection, and we definitely don't want robots. I'm looking for age appropriate. And we have to keep in mind that these are kids. Kids deserve a childhood, and they deserve to have fun. They deserve to have friends, and sometimes, education is very important, but sometimes there are things that are more important at times than education. Sure. If a person can't make friends, if they don't know how to start a sentence or have a conversation with someone, an appropriate conversation, end a conversation, tie their shoes. There's a lot of things out there that we can really do that I see that are very important that I think other ABA facilities overlook. And I think that that's a mistake. And so we try, if you come in our facility, which, the ribbon cutting was great, a lot of people got to see what we do, how that's so different than what other clinics do, is that the kids have a lot of fun. We don't use any type of punishment technique. So really to get a kid to be motivated to learn all the skills that we're getting them to learn, we have to have a lot of fun stuff that they're willing to work towards. And so that's one of the main things that separates us. The second thing that separates us is, I'm reminded of a conversation I had with a regional director of a company he was the director of one of the largest ABA facilities in the state. And I remember this is, 8, 9, 10 years ago, asking him well, hey, why don't you open something in Lufkin? And his answer was, the money's not there. And so that kind of shocked me and surprised me in a way, but then in a way not. And that's definitely not our mission. My mission is, I want to go where we're needed, and when my wife and I moved to the area, we definitely wanted to set down roots and we wanted to make an impact to our area. And so she's done a ton of work through Lufkin Pharmacy and with all the different things that were going on with vaccines and educating the community from that point of view. And this was something I really wanted to do. It was something the community didn't have. It was a resource that was sorely needed. And my heart just hurt every time I heard a parent or a grandparent say, there's just nothing here for us. We have to move to Dallas, or we have to drive to Tyler, or we have to move to Houston. And I had seen parents who were commuting to College Station, Houston, or just moving altogether, just so that they could have access to this therapy. And so that, I think, would be the second thing that sets us apart is That's that great. We just want to be here as a resource. We want to help.
A lot of people don't know that my background, I'm a speech pathologist. And so my favorite kids to work with were autistic children and Down syndrome children, because they were the ones that when they got it, every light bulb that there was came on. And I was working with a little boy who was 6 years old, had never made an utterance, not a not a buh, nothing. And his dad had him in the shower one day and he was holding him up. So he was getting all that auditory stimulation from the shower. And the dad turned off the water and the little boy looked straight into his eyes and said, "I'd like the water back on, please."
Wow.
And the dad was like, "When I pulled myself up off of the ground, we stood there until the water turned cold."
Yeah.
And from that moment on, the kid never quit talking. It was like you had just opened the box. And,
the light switch.
It was just amazing, and just to be able to work with kids, to be able to pronounce names correctly and to be able to shake hands. And so what you're doing is so needed. And I know that it has to be a privilege every day to be able to go to work, to be able to know that you're changing lives and you're being able to help shape futures for children who otherwise might not have had those opportunities. So y'all are doing great stuff.
I love what I do, and I mentioned all the different places I've worked, and this is the one where you really feel needed and wanted, and we've had probably 9 or 10 kids in the past year and a half that have been nonverbal that were speaking within a month or two of starting therapy. And I mean, that's a great privilege and that's a great honor to watch them do that. Absolutely. And we've had a few that have graduated the program and gone back to school, and watching them do well, and having the parents that kind of touch base and say, hey, now my kiddo is mentoring another kid.
Yeah.
Not only does no one even know that they have autism, but they're actually excelling and teaching other kids.
That's fantastic.
Or a child just being able to say mom for the first time or I love you for the first time. being able to dress themselves or shower themselves for the first time, and knowing that you were the one who painstakingly put all those things in place, and that, your staff are the ones who did that implementation day in and day out, and we have a lot of data that we take data on everything. And so our system is pretty awesome, where it'll break things down and tell us how many days on average it would take for a kid to master any skill, how many trials per day it would take. And so that gives us a really good gauge on how much therapy might be needed, because we can say, hey, this is what the testing is saying is age appropriate, and this is how long it's taking them for the master skills. This is where they need to be, and we can kind of make that projection. And so the kids that are in our facility are usually working on 15 to 20 new skills every single day.
Wow.
And so some of them, well, it's just like anyone else. Some people are faster learners than others. And some kids, are rock stars, and they'll master a skill in 12 days. And other kids, it takes longer. Maybe it's because they're more stubborn, or maybe they just learn more slowly. And so you're looking more at like 45 days to learn a new skill. But at the end of the day, or sometimes at the end of 6 months, if you're looking at the board and you're saying, hey, we were able to teach this kid 14 new skills, that are imperative to their individual functioning, then yeah, it's very rewarding. I love what I do.
That's great. I love that. So what are your plans for the future?
Plans for the future. My plan for the future for Reach is really, I want to go where we're needed. And so we, with COVID and everything that was going on, we didn't do a lot of marketing. I'm a big believer in only taking what I can responsibly manage. And so we had some, being a new resource, we had a lot of families contacting us, and we were doing admissions, and I felt like we were at a pretty healthy pace. And so now that kind of, COVID and all those things have kind of settled down, and we can, go back into the community and re-engage, and people aren't as afraid, of human contact and things like that. We've had some families reaching out. So we opened up our website, our Facebook page is growing. We've got a new marketing director now that's doing great things. And we're really trying to push into the community and, number one, educate the community. So we did a lot of training with the first responders of Lufkin. We've done training with a few different school districts in the area. We are hosting it's a mouthful, but the Angelina Autism Advocacy Group. We're hosting that once a month. And so families or teachers or whoever can come in, and they can listen and be taught. They can vote on what they want to hear at the next meeting. Nice. And so we host that. Sometimes we teach on those. And so I really want to push awareness into the community of what to do. What can you do for these individuals? Like, for the first responders, one of the best questions is, well, what do I have to do? What's the best way to handle it if I have to treat them? Right. And they didn't know, and they really wanted to know. And that's great. As far as expanding for Reach, we're looking at where we're needed. And so when families reach out, and we had a family recently reach out from a town north of here that was saying, hey, do you have anything nearby? Because you guys are just so far, we don't want to quit our jobs. But if you had something closer, we'd really like to do that. And that's in a town, Tyler, that has 4 other ABA facilities, but they're reaching out to us. Wow. And we do have some clients in the Tyler area. We just don't have a facility. Right. And so that says a lot. I think that they're reaching out and saying, hey, like, we want what you do. We've heard what you do works. We like what you do. And that's really it. I mean, I want to move where we're needed. And obviously you have to pay attention to like the logistics of things and how much you're spending versus how much it costs and things like that. So really, like, we're looking at a lot of different areas of expansion just based on families that have reached out and said, hey, like, we could really use some resources here.
That's great.
That's great.
So if people are interested in your services, if they have a child that they think is in need of your services, where would they go to find that? What does that process look like?
So they can go to our Facebook page, which is reachbehavioraltherapies.com, or Reach Behavioral Therapies on Facebook. And then our website is reachbt.com. And so there's pretty good information on there. We don't really want to overwhelm someone. A lot of times, especially for a family who just found out, like, they just got a diagnosis on their child, like that can turn your world upside down. Sure. And so really, we don't want to overwhelm. We just kind of want to be there to support. And so on the Facebook page, you'll see more things that are like, hey, these are all the fun things that we did this month, and we have staff that are doing a bunch of different things that are really cool and imaginative. And then we don't ever post pictures of our clients on our website or Facebook page or anything like that. That's a personal decision for me to not do that. But we do try to post, like, what we're doing as far as 4th of July. We cooked hamburgers and hot dogs for the kids and the staff and just did some fun stuff. So Cinco de Mayo, they had a really big deal that was pretty cute. So we try to post those types of events where families can kind of see, what their child might be doing, and if my child was in that facility, they're not just going to be stuck in a room, right. Like, and one of them, we had them dressed in like paleontologist hats, and they were digging dinosaur eggs and, having a blast doing that. And so there's different things like that we really just try to show, like, hey, this is what we do. The website's a little bit more informative, how to contact us if you want testing, or if you want to learn more about our facility, if you want to learn more about ABA. That's a really good resource to contact us through also.
Awesome. Great. Appreciate that.
Well, thank you for being on and for telling all of our listeners about what Reach Behavioral Therapy does.
Glad to. Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
Awesome. Appreciate your time coming on the podcast. And I want to thank you so much for listening to the podcast again this week. We appreciate your support. This video is a huge favor. If you'll share this podcast with someone who you think will find it interesting, it always helps to spread the word and let more people know about this podcast so it can reach as many people as possible. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll see you next week.